Welcome, friends, to the ReWilding Dad podcast. This is our first one, a test run. Just checking out the equipment. Special guest today is Mr. Alexander Diaz, longtime friend, collaborator, and all-around good man. This is just a little informal conversation. I hope you enjoy it. There'll be more to come. What have you noticed, doing this men's work lately? What are some of the things that you feel like men are really reaching for or desiring in their journey?
One of the things is we're able to get so much more vulnerable, 2 days into a cathartic retreat with no phone and away from stuff. So I've known a lot of these guys 30 years, but the vulnerability and the depth is unbelievable. It's new information that I've never heard about. A lot of guys are looking for significance, whereas in their professions, they're treated as insignificant. They're exploited. And so a lot of them are looking for that come up to be entrepreneurs and to get to that suzerain, self-employed power. Where they're honored, because they are people who honor others, but they themselves are not getting honored, even at our age.
Yeah.
And there's not very many niches in our society where there is that. And I think a lot of them are looking for how to be still a sweet, nice, gentle guy and receive the divine feminine, whereas they witness more popularity in the guys who are more harsh or more negging. And so, how do they strategically approach, love and being loved when, they bring their whole self and that self is rejected,
You say negging? Is that what you said?
Yeah, negging, people do this to each other. They're like, what are you, gaining weight? And the girl's like, no, I'm, I've been trying to fast and intermittent fasting. And it's I guess that's cool.
And that's what these guys are seeing as more desirable with women?
No, it's what they see as getting more affection. Those guys get more affection, it seems like. Yeah.
But they want to still be nice, sweet, caring people.
Yeah, they want to just be their loving self, and but still get the divine feminine.
As in, get the divine feminine. Are you speaking to the connection with others, with women, or their own feminine inside themselves?
Yeah, I would say more so getting to have actual relationships and real connections with real women. Yeah, is it can be really hard, but when you're in that old school mentality of I'm just looking for a wonderful person to partner with for my life, and that scares people off.
What we were just talking about this. What do you what do you think is the driving force in what you're hearing from these men? Do you feel like they're embracing some of their inner wilds and able to be a little more in maybe some stronger roles or stronger positions, bringing a little more intensity to life at certain times, and those aspects of the masculine, and especially the wild man archetype? Do you feel like they are connecting with that, or are they're not sure about it yet, and they're trusting, or they're hoping that the good guy will win, or are they really making a duality between these guys that are negging or just maybe a little more rude or a little more cold versus this really caring man who wants to really offer his heart, to women and just be supportive? Do you feel like they're kind of polarizing those two parts and not wanting to identify with that more maybe at times harsh or cold side, and really trying to be more identified with that softer side?
My sense is a lot of men are rejected and normalized and assaulted if they bring their real masculine self. And we have a few generations in now of a type of feminism that punishes. And it's usually hierarchical in terms of like teachers and mothers and like other characters who like discipline and punish when men are in their power, but then also get angry at men for not being in their power. And then those men who have been trained or who have been, propagandized in that way, they then assume that like all the aspects of their masculine are toxic instead of understanding that some manifestations of their masculine can be toxic and should be worked on, and some are like tremendous gifts. And what I've seen is that the men who embrace those gifts and like have that like come up of authority, they don't need to do it in a toxic way. But when they do that in a healthy, like boundaried and honorable way, the world kind of runs towards the righteous for them. And I think that's a big part of the discernment piece that we're working on right now, is to not just throw it all away, and to throw our whole masculinity away. And they take our guns, they take our balls, they take it all. But it's like to just say these are like the awesome ways that I can be a truly masculine man, and have the universe honor that, And so I've loved having that included in the work. And it's been beautiful to see that happening. A big piece of that is we'll do stuff like shooting guns, or we'll do stuff like finding trails through game trails and following the elk trail rather than the approved of trail. And I feel like these exercises are very nourishing to that wild man capacity.
I remember reading Robert Bly's Iron John, and he's speaking to this like wave of masculinity that's been moving the last few generations. And it's been fairly toxic for a good long while. And then maybe our father's age or a little younger, men started becoming softer. And to that feminist kind of response, feminism came up strong. It was like a pendulum swing in some ways. And like feminism needed to use its masculinity for penetrating into this toxic masculine world. And so it was like this pendulum swing of like, now women all of a sudden took on this intense masculine energy to try to create space for themselves. And in that response, a lot of men became softer, like new age men, Om Shanti, I want to be peaceful and I don't want to hurt anybody, nonviolence, those are good qualities. All those are great qualities. And as you mentioned before, they've also kind of lost some of that, more of that just like strong part of the masculine that can be, like a pillar of support, or can even be, it's a killer. Like we're killers also, we're hunters, we're killers, we're warriors. And it's like that part of us got just like swiped off the map in this response to that feminism intensity, because we're like, yes, I hear you, woman, and I want to change and I want to, support you. But it's like we lost those other parts also that are like, in a way, crucial to that, the overall balance of like, I see it as like a polarity of energies, masculine, feminine, but that's not like necessarily a gender identity. Like we can fall anywhere in that spectrum of those polarities and identify in any which way that we want. And keeping that polarity, at least in the sense of when it embodies more into the man, into the woman, there's an attraction that comes when, maybe a woman's in like her feminine and a man is in his masculine in a good way. Like it keeps an attraction there. And it's like, it's kind of like, it's a little edgy almost, but it's like beautiful and interesting and complementary. And I feel like there's been a big movement towards like homogenization, where women are taking on a lot of things and men are kind of like softening or stepping back from certain things. And it's like, it's in some ways cool. There's like some things are equalizing. But I think equality is not necessarily like sameness, like we all do the same things. But for me, equality is more about the respect, the reverence, the honoring, of each other in equal ways. Like everyone has an equal, beautiful role and importance that they can bring. And it doesn't matter what gender you are or how you identify. It's like you have that to bring and it's going to be different than everybody else, but you're equally as important. And so I think there's been this like crazy push for equality, but then we like misinterpret it as, oh, we should all do the same things and we should all treat each other the same and do all these things the same and expect the same things from each other. It's just some like, I think we've misinterpreted a little bit of that equality desire. And so I'm really curious in a way, like for me, I read this book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, and highly recommend it. And it had all kinds of little exercises in there and like journaling. And it's like, I'm a recovering nice guy. Because I was always just like, oh, you know, ahimsa, no nonviolence, like just be really like, you know, light and beautiful and caring. And I have that anyway. I'm like a very caring person. And so I was like, Mr. Nice Guy for sure. And what I found in that was my niceness was overriding my authenticness, like my authenticity. And so I wouldn't be my true self. I wouldn't be like authentic because I'm trying to be nice. And then because I was just being nice and I didn't want to be, like maybe I said yes to something I didn't want to do because I'm like, oh yeah, that would be nice for this person. They asked me and it sounds nice and I want to be nice. You know, they asked me if I wanted to go get some coffee with them and I was in the middle of something else, but I'm like, oh, sure. But really I wanted to stay and finish my project. And so when I said yes to go get coffee, I'm being nice. And in that, then I now have a little bit of resentment because it's like, well, I didn't really want to do this, but okay, I'm going to go along with it for you. You know, I'm doing this for you or something. And then maybe it happens again a month or two later and they're like, you want to go out to coffee? And I'm like reading a book and like, really, I just want to sit and read the book. But I'm like, sure, you know, let's go. And then I go and then even more resentment builds. And then the third time they ask, I blow up and I'm just like, no, you're always doing this and you're always doing that, you know? And so like in that nice guyness, it feels like it's a little volatile because it's like, it's not truly authentic all the time. Some of the times I think kindness and caring, that can be authentic. Niceness, I'm a little suspicious about. And because it can pressurize our internal systems with like resentments and these like projected judgments. And really it was because I didn't say no when I was asked something, you know, like I didn't really know what my boundary was and I didn't hold to that. And I wasn't able to be real in that moment. And so like that's kind of been this edge for this niceness and this like I want to be caring and sweet, and yes I do, and I think I am, but the niceness, that's like the shadow of that soft side for men, is that we kind of get a little bit pushover with our own boundaries. Like we don't have that firmness to say, and you can still be loving in that firmness. You can be like, no, that sounds amazing, thank you for the invite. I'm feeling really good with this book right now and I want to read this book, you know, boom, I'm still being caring but I'm also being authentic and I'm not just trying to be nice, like to them. So that's been a big lesson for me in these last few years of really dropping into what's real for me, what's my yes and what's my no, and learning through some beautiful workshops and retreats, that even if it's a maybe, or if it's a kind of, or sometimes even if it's a yeah or a yes, it's a no. Unless it's a fuck yes. You know, unless you're just like, fuck yes, I want to do that, then it's a yes. Everything else is a no for now. You know, and to swallow that, you know, to like make that more real for me and not, you know, like, because it's hard to say no to somebody sometimes. And it's hard to hear a no sometimes, you know, like if I hear a no, it can be like, oh, like shattering, like, what does this mean about me? Or they don't want to connect or this or that. And then my ego or mind or whatever starts creating all of this spin on a projection of what it might be. And just because like they were taking care of themselves and holding to a boundary, and they didn't feel like they were a full yes, and they said no. And, it's nothing about me. It's just they didn't want to do it, or at that moment. And so it's been a deep journey into that niceness and my own boundaries, and realizing like, yeah, what is real for me. And maybe at first I have to say no with like some force, because it's hard for me to say it and it can sound harsh. Yeah. But I think with time, and it's been a couple of years of this practice, a few years now, I feel like I can say no in more caring ways, and more like ways that are still supporting connection. Even if I don't want to connect in that way at that moment, like I can still support overall connection. And I love what in nonviolent communication, it's like its whole purpose is to bring us deeper into connection with each other and make life more enjoyable, And so it's like, you can still say no. Like that's a totally valid form of communicating, saying no. And so that's where I feel like a lot of guys, like you said, we've been used and abused by workplace, by the military, by like society. And yeah, it's patriarchal society, and like a few white men are kind of like running the show here and there. But that doesn't mean every man has like that kind of authority and sovereignty in his life. A lot of just the working man is kind of had a lot of pressures put on him, and a lot of judgments, and a lot of shames, and a lot of things. And so I think there's a big distortion in all of it right now. Yeah, like how do we show up in our way so we don't feel like we have that authority to say no? Because we're just like, we're the man, we're supposed to just hold the weight and carry it through, and not complain about it, and get back to work, and like just do these things. And it's like a martyr kind of like maybe mindset that comes in.
I was coming up with a really good bumper sticker for feminism, and it's we deserve the right to equal exploitation as you.
We deserve the right to equal exploitation. There's big exploitation on both sides.
because men are getting exploited like crazy.
Yeah.
And so when feminism is like, hey, we want those kind of exploitative jobs as you guys, and it's like, dude, we're not like loving this, like this is hard on us too. We're doing this for the fam.
Yeah. Yeah. In some ways, like maybe some of that feminist push is pushing to be more like the men in those ways, but it's like, that's not actually a great way for the men either. So it's very like, I think the powers that be perhaps have created it in such a way that we squabble amongst ourselves, but we're all getting fucked.
That's right. That's right. A big topic for me has been that there is no acceptable bigotry, and that like bigotry against hetero white men is not acceptable, that it's as bad as all bigotry. There's no hierarchy of victimhood either. It's just that all bigotry is wrong. And so I've been denying bigots most recently. And that's like a big part of my come up as a man, of saying, hey, even if you were hurt by specific people who were ball carriers, that doesn't mean that you are now, able to be bigoted against me because I happen to be a ball carrier. No.
Being more present to what's in front of you or who's in front of you, rather than weaving all men into that story that maybe a few men have gone into.
Yeah. Yeah. I really appreciate the words that you spoke and like what you share. And, I was in a conversation just an hour ago with my partner, and she was like extremely mad at me for going hiking with a friend of mine who's a womb carrier, who's a vagina carrier. And she was really, her speech was unacceptable. It was against the agreements that we had made. One agreement was don't threaten the relationship when you're pissed off. And the other agreement was don't be abusive and violent in your speech. And she was doing both of those things. And I said to her, I love you. I respect you. I understand you're upset. I understand some of that upset is coming from past things that we're still working out, but you're passing the boundary now, you know? And I think setting the boundary was really good. Her wish originally was that because she's upset, she should get to speak to me in whatever way she wants to. And I said, well, if you're going to speak to me in that way, it's going to build resentment in me. And I'm not going to allow myself to receive that and then have that resentment, because that's an unacceptable outcome.
Yeah, that's tough work, because it's so easy to get back when somebody's triggered at you, and to just then it doesn't become functional at all. There's no functional communication. It's just tap, and so that's good.
And she was able to take ownership of that and really do a great process. And then I was able to validate her feelings, and then we were able to create a solution and an agreement. And it's that's the good stuff.
Were you able to do that still in the same moment? She was able to transform enough and to feel it, or did you kind of set, maybe we should talk about this another time when somebody...
I gave it 20 minutes and then I called her again. But I wanted to be the active role in reaching out and letting her know that I feel I'm completely forgive you. I'm not angry. I accept you, but we need to do it differently next time.
Yeah. How did she receive that?
Extremely well. But she's that quality of human being. She's epic. So, as she's received it as usual, with her usual greatness. You know what I mean? But yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool.
What?
Thanks.
So yeah, with these men that you're working with, one thing you were mentioning earlier was getting into some of that almost tracking and wild skills, and even shooting, or maybe weapons, or even martial arts. And for me, that's a really important part of myself. And it makes me just feel more my center to know I have those skills, and connect to my wild man. It feels I just feel more at home in the world, because I at least know, a few things. I know a few ways around to survive, or to at least get started. And this ReWilding Dad journey is my journey as well. I don't know all these things, and I'm learning them and wanting more. And I'm seeing the benefit and how good it is to me in my life, and how more I can be in my own center and be in a strong masculine presence, and still be goofy, still be sweet, and still be caring, super loving and supportive. And so it helps me to, I guess, well-round myself and to feel good. And then I'm wondering also, excuse me, some of that is rather intense masculine, and maybe the feminine is less interested in some of that. And then there's other things, definitely the caring and the sweetness is they're interested in. And I think they're also interested in some of that more strong masculine essence. What do you feel like? Do you feel like there's maybe some other components that could be more of a bridge? If we're doing this really powerful masculine work with each other, how do we then flavor it or adapt it into connection with others, and especially non-masculine identified people? How do we bring that power,
Excellent question.
That kind of vicious, wild warrior, that strength, that fire, that penetrative power? It's great when we're with a bunch of men, but then how do we work with it so that it becomes a tool for connection as well with those who aren't identified as masculine or men?
So the retreats that my guys and I have been doing are a series of gates that are designed to bring you into vulnerability and the divine feminine, where it's hey, we all shoot together. Any one of us could kill the other one, no matter who's big, strong, old, young. Hey, we hike together and we decide where to go and get home safe because of a mutual decision-making consent process among the group. We cook together and we eat together, and you progress through this gauntlet of gates to the point where now you're in the King's Council, where you're sharing your most vulnerable pain and getting real advice and listening to it, despite it being challenging for you. So the idea is we're reeling people in, we're fishing and then reeling them in deeper and deeper into their like vulnerable masculine, which has just had the affirmation of their primitive and violent masculine to give them that sense of safety and stability that allows the vulnerability to be open.
Thanks for listening. That's all we got this time before those technical difficulties. If you want to learn more about Alex's offerings, check out Corvallis Acupuncture Functionalmedicine.com, and I'll also put some links on the ReWildingDad.club website so you can connect in with more of what Alex is doing. All right, men, stay wild.
We did a couple of really good men's groups the last 2 months, like 3-day retreats, both of them. And now we've got for September a couples retreat planned out here. And yeah, we've got a staff and a location settled, like a really nice mansion.